iView.
So earlier this week, we saw a turbine collapse at a wind farm at Berrybank Wind Farm. This is west of Geelong. Now, the state opposition are now using that as a call for an audit of all of Victoria's wind farms. I know that in the Berrybank case, there'd been forecast wind gusts of about 70 kilometres per hour and maybe 60 kilometres per hour over a couple of successive nights. Certainly the company has temporarily shut down the site while the incident is being investigated. Here's the local Liberal member for Polwarth. This is Richard Reardon speaking to ABC Ballarat's Steve Martin yesterday.
It is reasonable for large multinational companies who are getting their money back. Not only are they taking huge amounts of taxpayer funds, both state and federal, they're getting payback on these investments in a pretty short amount of time. There is enough in that for those companies to make sure the structures they're building are safe. You can't go and build a restaurant without toilets. You shouldn't be able to build a wind turbine without fire suppression. It makes sense. And you certainly shouldn't be allowed to build wind turbines that can collapse on a fairly average kind of storm.
Now, Dr. Nick Aberley is with the Clean Energy Council. He's their General Manager of Engagement. Nick, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick.
You represent the industry. What's your reaction to the hoopla? Is an audit needed?
I mean, first off, I just want to say that, safety of workers in local communities is really the number one priority of the clean energy industry. I mean, thankfully, we can confirm there were no injuries or fatalities from this incident. All the other turbines at Berrybank Wind Farm have been paused until a thorough site assessment has been concluded. There already is a very comprehensive framework for looking at this. I mean, WorkSafe Victoria and Energy Safe Victoria work extensively with industry to ensure compliance with a range of different standards. They do inspections, they do audits, they can issue improvement notices where they see things that are wrong or that need to be looked at. And that's all just part of the existing work health and safety legislation that we have. There are renewable energy specific inspectors out there in inspecting these sites. So there is already a thorough framework for ensuring that incidents like this certainly don't happen very often, they don't happen very often, and we have a framework to ensure that's the case.
So you're saying there's guardrails and there's protections and there's investigations, but this still did occur.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I don't want to speculate too much on the exact cause until the investigation has been completed. But one of the reports I saw yesterday indicated that this could have been like a major lightning strike. And what we really need to understand from the investigation is whether this is a type of incident that, had factors that could have been prevented, in which case everyone needs to learn from that, or whether this was something we put in the category of act of God. And maybe this turbine was just pretty unlucky and got hit by the mother of all lightning strikes. And at this stage, we just don't know.
Who is actually responsible for these safety concerns? Is it the owner of the Berrybank Wind Farm?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, the operator of a wind farm is responsible for the safety of the operation in the same way that the owner of any other business is responsible for the safety of their site and their workers. So that works in exactly the same way for a wind farm as it does for any other business. Like I said, I mean, that's why WorkSafe will be investigating this and does inspections at all renewable energy sites. There's Energy Safe Victoria, which is a separate regulator in the electricity or in the energy sector, tends to look more at the actual electrical side of things rather than necessarily the sort of structural side of things.
Nick, just really quickly, the Country Hour spoke to Armin Haiderpour. He's the Associate Professor of Structural Engineering at Monash University. He was a little bit scathing in his assessment of how something like this could happen.
It is totally unacceptable to see a 2-year-old wind turbine collapses because, as I said, normal service life for the entire turbine is approximately 30 years. The blade normally should have a design lifetime of 20 years. So 2 years is very short.
Now, obviously, you're saying the investigation coming through, it could be, as you, I think, said, act of God. It could have been a lightning strike. We are waiting to discover that. If it's none of those, and if it is a failure in terms of the manufacturing or the safety, are there penalties that can be brought to bear against the wind farm for failing?
Well, I mean, you've kind of said part of it there. Like, I don't want to speculate too much, and there's sort of a big if at the start of your question. I mean, generally, yeah, these things do last a very long time. I mean, the average life expectancy of a wind turbine, or the design life of a wind turbine, is now getting up at well above 30 years. 35, even 40 years potentially. So, that's a sort of the normal operation. If something has gone wrong, well, then that's what the investigation will tell us, and that should explain what the cause of any failure or what the cause of the collapse was. Once that has happened, then I'm sure people will be investigating. Well, what does that mean now? And the companies involved will be looking at how that plays out from a legal perspective.
Nick, I know there's sticking points when it comes to that renewable transition, and I know especially in regional areas there can be concerns. How do you go about, I guess, rebuilding trust with the communities after an incident like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's about just demonstrating, I suppose, that the industry takes this really seriously. I mean, even before this incident, we had arranged to convene CEOs of renewable energy companies in a few weeks' time to have a roundtable dedicated on safety. That's not something we did in the last couple of days in response to this. This is something we've been planning for some time. We routinely bring our members together to share information related to safety issues, to drive best practice, have expert presentations, help learning across the industry. So, I mean, that's what we as a peak body do. That's what our members are involved with on a day-to-day basis. But it's also just worth emphasising just how infrequent something like this actually happens. I mean, there's 340,000 wind turbines operating around the world. Occasionally things do go wrong, and when a turbine snaps in half, it makes for a good photo. But it's not happening very often, and I guess that's the point: is that this is relatively rare. And I guess to try to give people confidence that this doesn't happen very often, and everyone involved is working their hardest to ensure that it happens even less frequently than it already does.
Does that worry you that there's sometimes undue scrutiny in incidents like this when it comes to renewables?
I think every industry is exposed to risk and incidents like this, and every industry can expect scrutiny of those types of incidents. When a wind turbine snaps in half, it's very visible. So anyone driving along the road can see it. Plenty of other industries might have similar types of incidents where people can't see it because it's inside a warehouse or a factory or something like that. So, it makes for a more visible spectacle. But yes, the industry needs scrutiny just like everyone else does.
Nick, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Nick Aberle is the General Manager of Engagement at the Clean Energy Council. Sorry, apologies, Dr. Nick Aberle, I should say. Many texts coming in on this one. Manny and Marupna saying, I'd love to know how many of these wind farms are actually Australian-owned. International companies, I get concerned they cut the costs as much as they can. Berrybank is owned by a Spanish company. I think they're called Naturgy. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Sorry on that one. Bruce in Tat South saying, what would we expect from the anti-renewables NLP party fossil fuel industry vested interests? Wait for the investigation results and make a rational response. Let's not get hysterical. And Peter saying, Nick, don't forget that a turbine caught fire in the southwest last year. Keep those texts, keep those calls coming in. I'm on 1300 977 222 on the text line 0467 842 7.